continue to close the gap in infrastructure that was a result of decades, actually, of neglect by previous governments, including conservative governments most recently.
Yes, that's a disgraceful answer, Minister.
Sorry, Mr.
Also note in the estimates, there's $980 billion to fund wealthy people to buy electric cars.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Minister, thanks for joining us today. I think it's very important that you be here, so it is appreciated. I have to say this is probably, and I don't think you can find disagreement, this is probably one of the very worst AG reports that I have ever encountered in my 7.5 years here in the House. The performance and lack of answers from your deputies at the first meeting was, I'll be very frank, was disappointing. We have seen there's high-risk First Nations communities were not ID'd or prioritized. Structural mitigation needs were not met. First Nation homes damaged while communities waited for funding to address flood risks, non-existent or out-of-date emergency plans, lack of knowledge of emergency management commitments and whether they're being met. So I have to ask, who is responsible for this debacle? Who's responsible for all these, frankly, just unacceptable, horrible items listed in this report?
Well, thanks very much. And through you, Mr. Chair, I would say that the response of the government indicates that the government fully accepts responsibility to change a colonial system and to invest more aggressively in the space of both preparedness, but also in renewing emergency management approaches. And I think what has not worked well has been top-down, quite frankly, bilateral approaches where the federal government has...
I'm going to interrupt you. I appreciate that. But some of these items are from 9 years ago that haven't been done. And it's fine to sit and say, well, we're going to do this, but for 9 years that hasn't been done. Who's going to be held accountable? And then who's going to be held accountable on the go-forward basis to achieve the recommendations noted by the Auditor General? Because no one's been held accountable and no one's getting the work done. So please, I'd like a commitment from you. Who is going to be held accountable so that in 1 year, 9 years, we're not faced with the same report?
Well, certainly I think we should all be held accountable as members of Parliament to hopefully support the upcoming budget. We have a very aggressive...
Who's going to be held accountable for this debacle? Who's going to be held accountable to ensure that the recommendations in the Auditor General's report are going to be followed out and completed? So we're not sitting here in 9 years again, looking back and having an Auditor General saying, well, nothing's been done again.
Well, again, through you, Mr. Chair, I think it is all of us that is accountable. It is all of us that is accountable to Indigenous peoples to get reconciliation right. And I will point out that the Auditor General talked about reports during a time of Conservative government leadership where nothing was done. And this government is taking action in historic investments in First Nations communities that will result in...
Point of order.
Is it a point of order, Ms. Shanahan?
If the witness could be allowed to finish her answer. That's, 3 interruptions that we've had so far, and I know you're being judicious with the time.
No, but I do, as you know, we're on the clock here. This is something that I'm going to let members be a little aggressive with their time and seeking answers. Having said that, I would urge members to be respectful of all witnesses. Back to you, Mr. McCauley.
Okay. I think it's very clear that the people sitting at the front of this table are the ones that are going to be accountable for the specific items mentioned in this report. What is the dollar total needed to fully fund the 112 eligible projects that are noted in this report, please?
I will turn to my officials in a moment, but I think we're at 58 projects now.
No, what is the total dollars required?
I believe we have $82 million for the outstanding projects that are still on the list that we're working to complete.
So $82 million. How much is in the main estimates that have just been tabled to address these issues?
Thank you. So there's a number of sources of funds for the structural mitigation projects. There's $12 million dedicated to the structural mitigation.
Dedicated in the main estimates for these projects.
published?
So overall, there's funding of over $1 billion for other community infrastructure projects. So
I've asked a very simple question. There's identified projects that have been identified for infrastructure. The main estimates just came out. How much in the main estimates is set aside to address these now 58 projects that are outstanding?
if I could just add to that, we're working with communities in terms of prioritization. Part of that is to see what projects are ready to move on, which are still priorities for the community, and what those will actually cost, because as you know, there have been escalations
Perhaps I'll ask in a different way. Is all the money needed to finalize these 112 projects in the supplement or in the main estimates that were just tabled?
Thank you for the question. So just to clarify, there's $12 million annually dedicated to structural mitigation projects. And we work within the department to prioritize these projects when funding becomes available through other sources, such as the other community infrastructure.
Question, Minister, why is there not the money in the main estimates to finish all these projects?
Well, I assume, thank you for the question. I assume that through these questions that you will be supporting Budget 2023 as we seek to continue to close the gap in infrastructure that was a result of decades, actually, of neglect by previous governments, including conservative governments.
It's Harper's fault, yes. That's a disgraceful answer, Minister.
Sorry, Mr. McCauley, if you can ask a question or you can listen to it, but okay, go ahead. And you're down to about 15 seconds.
Thanks. I noticed in your departmental plans, there's not one mention of any of the items from the Auditor General report in the results expected, not one item. I also note in the estimates, there's $980 million to fund wealthy people to buy electric cars in the main estimates, but we have not the money to address this outstanding issue in the main estimates.
And that is the time. We'll have to come back to that. Colleagues, I have no problem with members pushing witnesses for answers, but I won't allow kind of commentary that's not a question. So if you could, again, back and forth is healthy, but run over commentary less so. Ms. Yip, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Welcome, Minister, to coming to Public Accounts. Thank you for coming. Did you want to finish answering any of the questions that Mr. McCauley had asked?
No.